Pros and cons of investing in commercial property. Is it a good idea to invest in commercial property? Well, if I said yes, I'd be a little bit of a hypocrite because I don't invest in commercial property. And if I said no, then I'll be lying because I think it is a good idea to invest in commercial property. So let me explain what I mean. So I'm interested in getting involved in commercial property because I recognize actually it's a great strategy to invest in commercial property. But our experience has always been residential, and we've done a lot in residential, and we get a lot of opportunities that come our way and we'll jump on those. If it's a great deal, why would we want to dismiss it? So I think we will do commercial when we find the right type of properties. We're always looking. We've acquired commercial that we then turn into residential, but when we have pure commercial property with a commercial tenant, that's something I'm very keen on doing. I think it's a great strategy. So why is that? Well, firstly, when we look at a residential property where we've got a tenant staying in that property, the overall, the way the system is structured, from taxation to law to tenant rights, everything's stacked in the favor, or let's say not in the favor of the landlord. So we're disadvantaged in many ways when we are residential landlords. Let's say, for example, you got a tenant that doesn't pay rent in a property. It could take months and months to get that property back and get that tenant out of the property. In the meantime, there could be damages in the property. They could be just continue to stay there with no payment of rent. And there's no easy way for you to get that property back. It's ridiculous the amount of process that you have to go through just to try and get property back. You know, if I'd walked into Sainsbury's and filled up my trolley with shopping and just walked out the door and I said, well, I don't want to pay for it right now, you'd get arrested straight away. But how is it different when you've provided a service to somebody, accommodation to somebody, and they don't pay rent, that you can't stop them from continuing to not pay rent and utilize the service? Makes no sense to me. So, you know, I do have a bit of a bee in my bonnet when it comes to regulation. I think it's very unfair in residential property. Now, when we compare this with commercial property, if you've got, let's say you've got a shop and you've let that out to a shopkeeper, they're running their business from there, and they're just, you know, for whatever reason they've stopped paying rent. You know, you can get that property back very quickly and very easily, which I think it's fairly fair. If they're not paying, you get the property back, you rent it to somebody else, and so it's a fairly nice, easy process. Generally, the agreements that are signed as well are FRI leases, meaning it's all the responsibility, the maintenance, the insurance, it's all the responsibility of the tenant. So the landlord has very little to do with the property. Whereas on my residential property, if the boiler stops working, the tenants will call us up. We'll need to arrange maintenance to get over, to have a look at it, to sort it out. Whereas in commercial, it's the tenant's responsibility. The tenants also agree to a much longer period of agreement generally. So, for example, on a residential property, it's about 6 months agreement, your 6 months AST agreement, whereas an FRI lease might be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 15 years, 25 years. They're often significantly longer periods of time with upward rent reviews, meaning every period, a certain period of time, that could be every 3 years or 5 years, or whatever it might be that you've agreed, that the rent will rise upwards. That will increase with the market as the market rates rise over time. So there seems to be a lot of advantages with having commercial property. You can also hold commercial property in your pension, i.e. through a SAS, where you can't hold residential property through a SAS, so it's not so tax efficient from that point of view as well. However, there've got to be some disadvantages to commercial property, and there is. So for example, if there's a vacant commercial property that you want to purchase because you want to improve it and then rent it out, generally you need the money to be able to do that, because you can't really borrow money to buy a commercial property, generally speaking, because when the lenders, they look at commercial property, they look at the income it generates, and its value is based on the income it generates. So if it doesn't have any income it's generating, often the lenders are uncomfortable providing you a loan to be able to purchase that property. So you need the funds to be able to purchase it. Then there are way more people looking for residential property to live in than there are tenants looking for commercial properties to operate businesses from. So the market is much, much smaller in terms of what they're looking for. And in residential property, you might have a flat, you might have a house, you might have a bungalow. That's pretty much it, right? In commercial, there could be all different types of commercial property. So, for example, it could be a warehouse, it could be a retail unit, it could be an office, it could be a hotel, it could be a leisure center, it could be a nursery. There's a mixture of things that building could be used for, and there's different levels of demand for those particular sectors. So I guess the point I'm making is finding the right tenant for a vacant commercial property can take much longer. And it's not unusual sometimes to see a commercial property that may be empty for a year or even 2 years where they're trying to find the right tenant to go into that property. So there is a period where it can be the property is vacant, and that can be quite painful for the landlord when they're trying to find the right tenant. And you're still paying business rates even though there's no tenant in the property as well. So that can be quite costly for a landlord. Hey, if you're enjoying these short videos that we're doing called Saj Dailies, then make sure you also check out our longer form content that we have on the channel. There's probably about 300 videos that are on the channel that we've uploaded over the last few years, and there's a lot more content uploaded regularly. And if you're enjoying it, then make sure you click on that like button. Also subscribe to the channel, but more importantly, leave me a comment. Let me know what it is about these videos you're particularly enjoying and particularly liking. Then once you've done that, make sure you click on this video, and I'll see you over here next.